It's undeniable that Nikon have been a major player in camera technology over the decades, from their groundbreaking Nikon F in 1959 all the way up to today with their mirrorless cameras that they're producing. The technology they're coming out with is absolutely mind-blowing. It's fantastic, and they've consistently pushed the boundaries of what cameras can do. And if you're new in film photography and looking for cameras to get you off the starter block, or even if you're an avid film shooter and you're looking at the Nikon system, if you go online you'll see a complete array of Nikon film cameras, and they do appear to be quite expensive. When you go on there you'll get presented with the usual suspects, such as the F6, the F5, the FM3A, the F3, the FE, the FM, the FE2. There's so many on there, and they are a pretty penny as well. Did I forget the F100? I did, I forgot the F100. Sorry to the Nikon F100 users, I'll stick that one on the list as well. Bloody hell, I forgot the F4 as well, sorry guys. However, there are many Nikon SLRs that are less desirable, but at the same time, bleeding fantastic cameras as well. And you can pick one up for less than £1 for two in your local curry house and throw a few beers in as well. They're pretty cheap online when you look at them. And when you're looking at lenses, most of these classic Nikon cameras take the F mount lens, and there's literally tons of them out there to choose from. And let's face it, this Nikon F6 isn't going to give me any better quality than photographs using the F90X, the same lens. This camera is just a lot cheaper than this one. This one's more expensive because it was a professional camera back in the day, and it had a lot of gizmos and functions for those professional shooters. This camera was more for the hobby or enthusiast photographer, and this one is a lot less expensive, which means you've got more money to spend on film. So if you are looking at getting into the Nikon range, have a look for these cameras. They're underrated. You won't see as many of them out there, but they are bleeding good cameras. This one here is the Nikon F90X, and you can pick these up for less than $100 or £100 or whatever, proper inexpensive. You've also got the Nikon F601 as well, and also the Nikon F801. Fantastic cameras, but the camera that I'm going to be shooting today is the F501, and I've had this one for quite some years and it's still working. 1986 this was made. That's like I say nearly 40 years ago, so it's nearly 40 years old. And it's still going strong. All the electrics works, the meter works fine, and it's packed with functions as well. And you can pick these up for about 50, 60, 70 pounds on eBay. If you want to look for quality in a camera and you want to make sure that it's mint quality, of course you're going to pay a little bit more. But as long as the inside and all the guts are working, you know, and it's breathing properly, it doesn't matter sometimes what the exterior looks like. It might look a little bit shabby, so if you're getting a real good bargain, as long as the camera inside works. And this camera is absolutely packed with features. You've got full manual control, you've got electronic shutter with speeds from 1 second to 1/2000th of a second, and you've got a bulb mode as well. It's got aperture priority, where you select the aperture and then the camera will do the rest to get the exposure. And it's also full auto as well, where the camera will control the aperture and the shutter speed at the same time. It's got a good autofocus, manual focus, constant focus as well. It's got exposure lock, it's got a focus lock, and the burst rate is 2.5 frames a second. And it's got DX coding as well, so if your film's got the little barcodes on it, put it inside the camera and it will recognise the speed of the film straight away. The ISO speed values on this camera go from 12 ISO all the way to 3200 ISO, so plenty to play with there. It's got exposure compensation dial, it's also got a self timer, and it's also got an audio signal as well if you need it to tell you if you're underexposed or overexposed or out of focus. I think it does, it's quite loud. You can turn that off as well. And inside the viewfinder you've got focusing aid as well, so if you haven't got any autofocus lenses on this camera and you're turning the trying to manually focus, you've got that to aid you. When it goes to green, the little dot goes green, that means you're in focus. And the metering on this camera is center weighted metering, and if you look through the viewfinder on the right hand side, it gives you all of your shutter speeds, and it will tell you where you are at the moment, and it will also tell you where you should be for your exposure. And you even get this little tiny spinny thing at the back of the camera, so every time the camera advances, that thing spins around to tell you that it's being taken up on the spool. But the weird thing is you can't see it when you've got your eye to the viewfinder. I've never quite understood that. That's the only camera I've ever seen that on a Nikon. But there's only 3 downsides to this camera that I can think of, and that is it hasn't got any depth of field preview. So if you're wondering what your depth of field's looking like, you've got to guess it. There's no depth of field preview on here. It's also not 100% viewfinder, it's 92%. So when you're looking through the viewfinder, what you're actually seeing is only 92% of the scene. The other 8% will come out in a negative, what you can't see around the edges. Also, it runs on batteries, not too bad, 4 AAA batteries, easy to get, easy to put spares in your bag, but it runs on batteries. So if the batteries run out and you ain't got no batteries, you ain't taking any photographs. But they're not without their problems. These older cameras with the electronic shutters, you've got electrics inside. At some point they're going to go if you're lucky. I've been lucky with this one, but at some point they may go. And with this particular model, I've read online that some people, the electrics have gone inside the camera. Whether that's easy to get fixed or not, I don't know. And also some people saying that the autofocus system in the camera, the motor, has packed up. But that's the chances you take when you're buying old cameras, whatever they are. So you just got to make sure that you ask the right questions before you buy the camera. If you can try the camera, try it. If you can't, just ask all the right questions, and also make sure that there's some sort of 30-day money back guarantee sort of thing if it's not to your expectations. Sometimes you can get those sort of deals with people on eBay or other places to buy these cameras. So let's take this camera out on location and we'll shoot the camera. I'll take a few different Nikon lenses with me and see what sort of photographs we can come up with, some compositions and maybe some creative stuff. I don't know yet until we get on location, and we'll see how this camera performs, and we'll come back and have a look at the negatives. So what have I bought with me? Obviously I've bought the camera. I've got a 28mm Nikon lens. I've also brought out with me Sigma 28-135 lens. This is a nice lens. This goes into a macro mode, so I can get really close up stuff with this lens. And it's a relatively cheap lens as well. You can get those pretty cheap online, these ones. I've also bought out a Zeiss Milvus 50mm lens, and obviously these are all f-fit lenses for Nikon. A 55mm micro lens as well, and I've bought out a 180mm ED lens as well. So I've got 5 lenses to play with, and of course I've bought some spare batteries as well, and I've bought out a orange filter. Now it's not the filter that I would put on the lenses on the screw, on the thread of the lens, or a circular filter. It's just a square orange filter. I couldn't be bothered to be faffing around with taking filters on and off, so this one I'll just hold in front of the lens. And what this orange filter will do, because it's got blue sky up there, will just darken it down a little bit for any exterior shots that I want to take. And if you've never seen this place before, this is called Apple-Durham House on the Isle of Wight. And legend has it, back in World War II, a German bomber came over and he was going to plant some mines, he was going to drop some mines over Portsmouth, which is just over the water there, a big dockyard. And they had some engine trouble with their plane, and what happened is, as they were circling around, didn't know what to do, they decided to dump a load of weight off the plane because they was going to be going down, so they just dumped all the bombs nearby, and they landed not too far from this place here, and the blast totally took the roof off this place and obliterated it. And since then all the interiors have been taken out, all the beautiful ornate woodwork and stuff and whatever, and all that's left is now just a shell. And it's now part of the National Trust for people to come and visit. It's a nice place to come and have a picnic or whatever with your family, walk around, take some pictures, and that's what I like it for, taking photographs. I always see something different when I come here and just look around. So I'm in one of the rooms of the house. What I'm looking at here at the moment is those shadows on the floor from the windows. The sun is beautiful. It's really early in the morning. It's about 8 o'clock, so the sun is not too bright, but it's just low enough to create some really nice shadows. And you can see those shadows on the floor behind me. I'm trying to figure out a way I can get a composition around it. There's a couple of stickers on the windows that says fire exit. I don't really want those stickers in the shot, so I'll have to compose or frame around it. But it'd be nice if I can get some of the window just showing where the shadows are coming from. I think it'll make a nice shot. Of course, then I've got the metering to think about as well. With this camera, it's partial metering, but I'm just going to keep it simple. Using the Fuji Acros, I should get some nice hard hitting contrast anyway. So I'm hoping to get a nice contrasty look on this little scene here. And this is the composition that I settled for, exactly where the video camera is there. I've got half the window in, or 3/4 of it at the bottom, and this shadow going along, and there's a black bar right running across there. I don't know if you can see it on the video camera from the middle section of the window frame. That's also in the shot as well. But I've got to remember that I haven't got 100% viewfinder, so whatever compositions I'm getting through the lens, I've got to account for a little bit more around the edges. But you can see the composition, nice straight on, just simple stuff. And this camera would possibly have been a backup or spare for those wedding photographers back in the 80s that mainly shot on the F3 or F2, and they needed a spare camera in case they broke. Maybe this one was one that they would put in their bag for a spare. Or maybe for an enthusiastic hobby photographer that just couldn't wait to show off his camera at his son's sports day, showing off the 2.5 frame per second burst rate. And a camera that was nowhere near as expensive as Nikon's flagship cameras at the time, but it packed its own punch with all the functions and trimmings that this camera's got. And it's a camera that hardly gets mentioned when people say, I want to get into shooting Nikons, what camera should I get? This camera is hardly ever mentioned. If you have a look online, you'll be surprised at how cheap these are and how fantastic they are as well. So on this shot, I'm going to use the orange filter, just place it over the lens and take my shot. I've got a little bit of the, well, half of the blue sky in, so that orange filter will make it go dark. And I'm just getting some of the house in the front and a little bit fading off into the background. So I've got some good results over at Apple Durham, and none of those photographs wouldn't look out of place inside the offices of Apple Durham, framed on the wall, you know, just detailed shots, close-up shots of the building and some of the structure. There was one photograph I took, if you notice, for the sharp-eyed viewers out there, the first photograph I think I showed you, slightly out of focus. I had a little tiny bit of wobble going on. I think I must have been about 1/30th of a second handheld in that room. But I don't know whether you guys noticed it or not, but I put it up there anyway. We all make mistakes. What's the point in hiding them? And like I said, these cameras are fantastic. If you go on eBay and look for Nikon film cameras, you're probably not going to see one of these come up for quite scrolling sometime down. Or if you ask somebody, what sort of Nikon camera should I get? What SLR should I get to get into film photography? They'll probably give you the usual suspects of the F3, the F2, the FM3A. They're fantastic cameras, of course they are, but they more than likely won't mention a F501 or some of the others that I've mentioned as well. And there are also some silver ones as well, a bit like the Canon EOS here, the silver camera EOS. This thing's fantastic. It's light and it just works. So put a decent Canon lens on there, I'm off shooting some nice photographs. These are relatively inexpensive as well. And if you get one of these cameras for 30, 40 quid, gives you a bit of budget left over as well to get a couple of Nikon lenses, or even the Sigma lenses that I've got here. This one was the first F lens that I got, which is a Sigma 28-135, and you zoom right in, it ends up as a macro lens as well. And I think I got paid about 30 quid for that. F-fit lens, fits all my Nikons, and I still use it today. Not only that, if these cameras do break on you and you're quite hands-on, you can pick these up that you know, are not working on eBay for really next to nothing. I did the same thing a while ago. One of the back doors on a similar camera to this broke, and I went on eBay and I managed to pick up a same camera for 5 quid that didn't work, and I just swapped the back doors over. That camera's now working fine. So, you know, you can pick these cameras up pretty cheap when they're not working, and if you're hands-on, you can get fixing them. I do wonder why they didn't put a depth of field preview in this camera. That's one thing that did confuse me, why they didn't add that Nikon, because it is quite handy, you know. It's like when I was at Apple Durham, I was shooting some scenes, and I just wanted to see what the depth of field was, but it wasn't going to show me that. But yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? And the thing is, with these electronic shutter cameras, they're not working without batteries, which, you know, it can leave you in a spot of bother if this is the only camera you're going to take out, and all of a sudden, after 30, 40 years or whatever, the electrics decide to die, you haven't got a camera. Some of the other Nikons that are fully mechanical are very good. You know, you haven't got batteries to worry about, and you know it's just going to work. But with these cameras, you take your chances. But saying that, like I said, this is 40 years old and it's still going strong now. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. A little insight there to some of the less desirable Nikon cameras you can pick up really cheap. Have a look around if you're looking for the Nikon system at the F501. I think it's a great camera. And let us know in the comments if you've got one of these, or if there's any other Nikon cameras away from the usual suspects that are relatively inexpensive that you can recommend to others. Leave it in the comments for me and others to read as well. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves watching the Euro football if you're into that. And I'll catch you next time.